I still can't believe an 8-year-old boy noticed what an entire room of lawyers, executives, and billionaires missed. The $800 million deal was already on the table. Silver pens were placed beside the contracts. Champagne glasses waited near the window. Cameras were ready to capture the moment the biggest business merger of the year became official. And standing quietly near the back of the room was a black maid, holding a tray of coffee while trying to keep her little son still beside her. He wasn't supposed to be there. The billionaire's fiancé had already looked at him once and whispered, "Why is the maid's child in here?" Then she smiled coldly and said louder, "Don't touch anything. One mistake from him could cost more than your mother makes in a lifetime." The room chuckled. The maid lowered her eyes. But her son didn't. He was staring at the contract on the table. Not the people. Not the money. Not the cameras. The contract. Then, just as the billionaire picked up the pen to sign, the little boy stepped forward and said one sentence that froze every person in the room. "Sir, that number doesn't match the first page." Everyone turned. The fiancé laughed. He can't even understand what he's looking at. But the boy pointed to one hidden line buried deep inside the agreement. A line that would have secretly transferred control of the entire company the moment the ink dried. The billionaire stopped breathing. The lawyer's face went pale, and the maid, who had spent years being invisible in that mansion, suddenly realized her son had just saved an $800 million empire. Stay with me, because what that little boy found wasn't just a mistake. It was a trap, and the person behind it was sitting right beside the billionaire, smiling like she had already won. The morning of the $800 million signing began before sunrise inside the Whitmore estate. While the world outside still slept under a pale gray sky, the mansion was already awake. Crystal lights glowed over marble floors. Florists carried white orchids through the front hall. Caterers moved silently through the kitchen with silver trays. Security guards stood at every entrance, checking names against a guest list printed on thick cream paper. Today was not just another business meeting. Today, Adrian Whitmore, 36 years old, billionaire founder of Whitmore Global Logistics, was about to sign the biggest deal of his life, an $800 million merger with a European shipping company called Vossler International. If the deal closed, Adrian's company would expand across 3 continents overnight. Financial channels had been talking about it for weeks. Reporters waited outside the gates. Investors were already calling it the deal that would change global supply chains forever. But inside the mansion kitchen, far away from the cameras and champagne, Marissa Cole was wiping coffee cups by hand. Marissa was 31, a black single mother with tired eyes, gentle hands, and the kind of quiet strength most people never noticed until they needed it. She had worked at the Whitmore estate for almost 4 years, first as part-time cleaning help, then as a full-time maid after Adrian's house manager realized she was the only person who could keep the enormous home running without drama. She knew which guest preferred almond milk, which lawyer hated ice, which investor always asked for extra napkins but never said thank you. She knew the hidden rhythm of the house, the kind rich people depended on but rarely respected. And beside her, sitting on a small wooden stool near the pantry door, was her 8-year-old son, Caleb. Caleb was supposed to be at school, but at 5 that morning, Marissa's babysitter had called in sick. Her neighbor was out of town. The school bus had come and gone before she could find anyone else. Missing work was not an option. Not today. Not when every staff member had been warned that mistakes would not be tolerated. So Marissa had done the only thing she could do. She brought Caleb with her. "Stay close to me," she whispered, smoothing the collar of his blue button-up shirt. "Don't wander. Don't touch anything. And if anyone asks, you're waiting for your ride." Caleb nodded. He was small for his age, with deep brown skin, serious eyes, and curly hair Marissa had carefully brushed that morning. He carried a worn backpack that looked too heavy for him, and a small notebook he took everywhere. Other children drew superheroes and dinosaurs. Caleb drew floor plans, number patterns, little charts with arrows connecting things no adult understood at first glance. Marissa called it his thinking book. His second-grade teacher called it too advanced to be normal. Caleb didn't talk much, but he noticed everything. That was what worried Marissa most. In a house like this, noticing too much could become dangerous. By 9 o'clock, the boardroom had been transformed into a stage. Long glass table polished until it reflected the chandelier above. Leather chairs lined on both sides. Silver pens placed beside each contract folder. A row of champagne glasses waited near the far window, though no one would drink until after the signing. Behind the table, a massive screen displayed both company logos side by side. Whitmore Global, Vossler International. Two empires about to become one. Adrian stood at the head of the room in a charcoal suit, calm on the outside, but tense in the shoulders. He had built his company from a rented office and 2 delivery vans after his father died, leaving behind debt, not wealth. People called him lucky. They forgot luck did not work 18-hour days or sleep under a desk during the first year of business. Beside him stood his fiancée, Vanessa Crane. Vanessa was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful. Perfect blonde waves, cream designer dress, diamond bracelet, soft smile that never quite reached her eyes. She came from one of those old money families that treated kindness like a weakness and staff like scenery. To the cameras, she looked like the perfect future wife of a billionaire. To Marissa, she looked like trouble dressed in silk. Vanessa had never liked her. At first it was small things. A cup returned because it was smudged, though it was spotless. A dress moved from one closet to another and somehow blamed on Marissa. A dinner guest's missing bracelet that magically reappeared after Vanessa had already made Marissa empty her pockets in the hallway. Adrian never saw most of it. He was always in meetings, always on calls, always trusting Vanessa's version of events because why would the woman he loved lie about the maid? That morning, Vanessa entered the kitchen just as Marissa lifted a tray of coffee. Her eyes fell instantly on Caleb. "What is he doing here?" Marissa's grip tightened around the tray. "I'm sorry, ma'am. My sitter canceled this morning. He'll stay out of the way." Vanessa looked Caleb up and down like he was a stain on the floor. "This is an $800 million signing, Marissa, not a daycare." Caleb looked down at his shoes. Marissa swallowed her pride. "I understand. He won't bother anyone." Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to make it private but still painful. "One mistake today and you're gone, both of you." Then she smiled brightly, as if she had said something polite, and walked out. Marissa stood still for a moment after she left. Caleb looked up. "Mom? I'm okay," she said quickly. But children know when adults are lying. By 10:30, the boardroom was full. Lawyers in dark suits. Executives with watches that cost more than Marissa's car. Foreign representatives from Vossler International. Adrian's chief financial officer. 2 cameras from a business network waiting to capture the final handshake. Marissa moved through the room silently, pouring coffee, replacing water glasses, collecting empty cups before anyone asked. Caleb stayed near the back wall beside a decorative cabinet, hugging his notebook to his chest. He tried to be invisible, but Vanessa noticed him anyway. During a quiet pause before the signing, she turned toward Marissa and said loudly, "Please make sure your son doesn't get too close to the table. Some of these papers are worth more than your entire apartment building." A few people chuckled. Marissa's face burned, but she kept her eyes lowered. "Yes, ma'am." Caleb's small jaw tightened. Adrian glanced up from his contract folder. For a second he looked toward Vanessa, then toward Marissa, as if something in the tone had bothered him. But before he could speak, one of the lawyers asked him to review the final page. The moment passed. Vanessa saw that, and her smile returned. The lead attorney cleared his throat. "All parties are ready. Once Mr. Whitmore signs, the first transfer phase becomes active immediately." Adrian picked up the silver pen. Cameras shifted into position. The room leaned forward. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. But Caleb was no longer looking at the people. He was staring at the contract. From where he stood, he could see the first page of Adrian's folder reflected faintly in the glass table. He could also see the last page in the lawyer's hand. Most people would have seen nothing but blocks of legal text and numbers. Caleb saw patterns, and one number was wrong. His eyes narrowed. He looked from the first page to the final page again, then to the screen behind Adrian, where the merger structure was displayed in a neat chart. His fingers opened his notebook almost by themselves. He wrote one number down, then another. Then he stopped. His face changed. Marissa noticed. "Caleb," she whispered, "don't." But Caleb was already stepping forward. The pen touched the paper. "Sir," Caleb said. No one answered. He took another step, his voice small but clear. "Sir, please don't sign that." Every head turned. Vanessa's face hardened immediately. Adrian froze with the pen in his hand. The boy pointed at the contract. "That number doesn't match the first page." For one breath, nobody moved. Then Vanessa laughed, but this time, Caleb did not lower his eyes. Vanessa's laugh was light, polished, and sharp enough to cut through the room. "Oh, this is adorable," she said, turning toward the executives as if Caleb were some unexpected entertainment. "The maid's little boy thinks he understands an $800 million contract." A few people smiled awkwardly. One of the Vossler representatives gave a short laugh. Another lawyer looked away, pretending to check his notes. Marissa's stomach dropped. "Caleb," she whispered, rushing toward him. "Come back here." But Caleb didn't move. His small hand stayed pointed toward the contract folder in front of Adrian Whitmore. His face was nervous, yes, but not confused. That was what made Adrian pause. The boy wasn't guessing. Adrian slowly lifted the silver pen away from the paper. "What number?" he asked. Vanessa's smile vanished for half a second. "Adrian, please," she said quickly. "We are not delaying a historic merger because a child saw a number upside down." Caleb swallowed hard. "I didn't see it upside down." The room went quieter. Adrian leaned back in his chair, studying him. "Then tell me what you saw." Marissa's face turned pale. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm so sorry. He doesn't mean to interrupt. He just notices things sometimes." Vanessa snapped her eyes toward her. This is exactly why he shouldn't be here. But Adrian raised one hand. "Let him speak." That simple sentence changed the air in the room. Caleb looked at his mother first. Marissa's eyes were full of fear, silently begging him to stop before he made things worse. But beneath that fear, he saw something else. Trust. The same trust she gave him when he corrected grocery receipts, when he found missing bills, when he quietly told her the landlord had added the water fee twice. So Caleb took one step closer to the table. "On the first page," he said, pointing to Adrian's folder, "it says Whitmore Global keeps 51% voting control after the merger." The lead attorney frowned. "That is correct." Caleb pointed toward the final page in the attorney's hand. "But that page says the transfer phase activates at signing, and the number there is 49. The attorney blinked. Caleb continued, his small voice becoming steadier. "If 49 is the number that activates after signing, then someone else gets the extra 2% later." A strange silence spread across the boardroom. The lead attorney lowered his eyes to the page. Vanessa crossed her arms. "That is not how legal contracts work." Caleb looked at her. "I know. That's why it's hidden." The words landed hard. Adrian turned fully toward the attorney. "Give me the final page." The attorney hesitated. Only for a second. But Adrian saw it. "Now," Adrian said. The attorney handed it over. Adrian scanned the paragraph Caleb had pointed to. His eyes moved line by line. At first his face showed only concentration, then confusion, then something colder. "Why does this clause reference Schedule 14C?" he asked. The lead attorney adjusted his glasses. "It's standard transfer language." Adrian looked up. "I asked why." No one answered. Caleb opened his notebook and walked closer, placing it carefully on the edge of the glass table. The adults watched him as if they could not decide whether to laugh or be afraid. "I wrote it here," he said. "First page says 51. The screen says 51. But this page says 49 after signing. Then Schedule 14C changes preferred shares into voting shares after the first transfer." Adrian stared at the notebook. There were arrows, numbers, a small chart drawn in pencil. It was messy, childlike, but the logic was clear enough to make the CFO sit forward suddenly. "Wait," the CFO whispered. Vanessa's face tightened. "This is ridiculous." The CFO grabbed his copy of the agreement and flipped through it. "Where is Schedule 14C?" One of the junior lawyers at the far end of the table froze. Adrian noticed. "Find it." Papers began moving. Folders opened. The clean, confident rhythm of the signing ceremony shattered into frantic page-turning. Marissa stood behind Caleb, her hands pressed to her chest. She wanted to pull him back, but no one was laughing now. Even Vanessa was no longer smiling. Finally, the junior lawyer found the schedule. His hand shook as he passed it to the CFO. The CFO read the first line, then the second. His face drained. "Adrian," he said slowly, "the boy is right." Room seemed to tilt. Adrian stood up. "What do you mean, he's right?" The CFO swallowed. "If you sign this version, Whitmore Global keeps 51% on paper today. But after the transfer phase activates, a preferred share conversion quietly shifts 2% voting control to a holding company tied to Vossler." The Vossler representatives went stiff. Adrian's voice dropped. "Which holding company?" The CFO looked at the page again. "Crane Meridian Trust." For 1 second, nobody seemed to understand. Then Adrian turned his head toward Vanessa. Crane, her last name. Marissa felt the blood leave her face. Vanessa let out a soft laugh, but it sounded forced now. "That must be some old family entity. I have no idea what that is." Caleb looked down at his notebook, then up again. "It's written on your bracelet," he said quietly. Every eye moved to Vanessa's wrist. Her diamond bracelet had tiny engraved letters on the inside edge, CMT, Crane Meridian Trust. Adrian stared at it. Vanessa slowly covered the bracelet with her other hand, but it was too late. The cameras in the room were still recording, and the boy she had mocked for standing too close to the table had just uncovered the first thread of a betrayal worth $800 million. The boardroom was no longer a signing ceremony. It had become a courtroom without a judge. Adrian stood at the head of the glass table, the unsigned contract still open in front of him. A few minutes ago, every person in that room had been smiling for cameras, waiting for champagne, ready to celebrate an $800 million victory. Now no one moved. Vanessa slowly pulled her wrist behind her back, hiding the bracelet as if the letters had not already burned themselves into everyone's memory. CMT, Crane Meridian Trust. Adrian's voice was quiet when he spoke, but it carried more weight than shouting ever could. "Vanessa, what is Crane Meridian Trust?" She blinked quickly, then laughed again, but the sound had lost all beauty. "Adrian, you're letting a child turn a business meeting into a circus." Caleb stepped closer to his mother, but his eyes stayed on the contract. Marissa put a hand on his shoulder. Her fingers were trembling. "Mr. Whitmore," she whispered, "I'm sorry. We didn't mean to." Adrian turned to her immediately. "Don't apologize." The room went still again. Marissa stared at him, shocked. Adrian looked down at Caleb, then back at the adults around the table. "The only person who should apologize is whoever expected me to sign away my company while everyone else sat here pretending not to see it." The CFO, Daniel Price, flipped through the documents faster now, his face growing paler with every page. "It's worse," he said. Adrian looked at him. "How much worse?" Daniel swallowed. "Crane Meridian Trust is listed as a secondary beneficiary in 3 separate conversion clauses. It's not just 2%. If the acquisition triggers the debt protection language, the trust could gain temporary board control." A heavy breath moved through the room. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Temporary board control means what?" Daniel looked straight at him. "It means they could remove you as CEO within 90 days. Marissa's heart pounded. Even Caleb looked frightened now, as if he finally understood the size of the trap he had uncovered. Vanessa's expression hardened. "This is absurd. These are complex legal structures. Daniel is overreacting because a child embarrassed him in front of cameras." One of the Vossler executives stood abruptly. "We had no knowledge of this trust." Adrian turned toward him. "Then why is your company's merger agreement carrying it?" The man's face flushed. "Our legal team prepared the final draft with outside counsel." "Which outside counsel?" Adrian asked. No one answered. Then Caleb lifted his notebook again. "The name is in the corner." Everyone turned toward him. He pointed to the bottom of Schedule 14C. The little letters. Same initials. Daniel leaned over the page. His eyes narrowed. "Prepared by CM Legal Advisory." Adrian slowly looked at Vanessa. "CM," he said. "Crane Meridian." Vanessa's face changed. Not fully. Not enough for the cameras to call it a confession. But everyone in that room saw the mask slip. For 1 second, the polished fiancé was gone, and something cold stood in her place. "You have no idea what I've done for you," she said. Adrian stared at her. For me? For us, she snapped. You build empires with emotion, Adrian. I build them with control. Vossler was weak. Your board was divided. Your company needed someone who knew how to secure power before someone else took it. By stealing it? By protecting it. The words hung in the air like poison. Adrian stepped back, as if he no longer recognized the woman standing beside him. You were going to take my company. Vanessa's eyes flashed. I was going to make sure it survived you. The cameras were still recording. The lawyers were silent. The Vossler team looked terrified. And near the back of the room, a black maid stood with her hand on her son's shoulder, realizing that her little boy had just exposed the woman no one else dared to question. Adrian turned to security. Lock the room. Vanessa's face went pale. Adrian! He didn't look at her. Collect every contract copy. No one leaves with documents. Daniel, call internal counsel. Then call federal authorities. Vanessa took one step toward him. You would ruin me over this? Adrian finally faced her. No, he said. You did that when you thought the only person smart enough to catch you didn't matter because he was the maid's son. Caleb lowered his eyes. Adrian walked toward him and knelt, bringing himself to the boy's height. What's your name? Caleb, he whispered. Adrian's voice softened. Caleb, you just saved my company. The boy looked at his mother, then back at Adrian. I only saw the numbers didn't match. Adrian smiled sadly. That's more than everyone else in this room did. And for the first time that morning, Marissa saw something change in Adrian Whitmore's eyes. He was no longer looking through them. He was finally seeing them. Security moved fast. 2 guards stepped in front of the boardroom doors while Daniel Price collected every contract copy from the table. Lawyers who had looked powerful only minutes earlier now sat stiff in their chairs, avoiding Adrian's eyes. The champagne glasses near the window remained untouched, catching the morning light like decorations at a funeral. Vanessa stood frozen beside the table. For the first time since Marissa had known her, she did not look polished. Her perfect hair, her cream dress, her diamond bracelet, none of it could hide the panic rising behind her eyes. Adrian, she said softly, changing her voice now, making it sweet again. Please, we can discuss this privately. Adrian didn't move. There is no private discussion after you tried to steal my company. Vanessa's mouth tightened. You're being emotional. No, Adrian said. I'm being awake. The words silenced the room. Marissa held Caleb close, wishing she could disappear and yet knowing that if her son had stayed silent, Adrian Whitmore would have lost everything before lunch. Caleb's small fingers gripped her sleeve. Mom, he whispered. Did I do something bad? Marissa bent down immediately, her eyes filling. No, baby, you told the truth. Adrian heard him. He turned from Vanessa and walked toward them. This time, the whole room watched the billionaire cross the boardroom, not toward the executives, not toward the lawyers, but toward the maid and her son. He stopped in front of Caleb and lowered himself to one knee again. You did nothing bad, Adrian said gently. You did what a room full of adults should have done. You paid attention. Caleb looked down shyly. I just saw the numbers, and that saved me. Vanessa let out a sharp breath. This is ridiculous. Are we really celebrating a child scribbling in a notebook? That child found the lie you hid. Her face hardened again. You'll regret humiliating me. Adrian's expression turned cold. No, Vanessa. I regret trusting you. Before she could answer, the boardroom door opened. 2 federal investigators entered with Adrian's internal counsel. Daniel had already sent the documents. The cameras were still recording from the business network, and every second of Vanessa's collapse had been captured. One investigator approached her. Vanessa Crane, we need you to come with us and answer questions regarding attempted corporate fraud and conspiracy. Vanessa's face went pale. This is a misunderstanding, she said, but her voice shook. As they escorted her out, she passed Marissa and Caleb. For a moment, her eyes landed on the boy she had mocked. Caleb did not hide behind his mother this time. He simply looked back. That seemed to break her more than anything. When the doors closed behind her, the room remained silent until Adrian turned to the Vossler executives. This deal is over. No one argued. Then he faced the cameras. Let the record show, he said, that Whitmore Global was saved today by Caleb Cole, an 8-year-old boy everyone in this room underestimated. Marissa covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Adrian looked at her, and by his mother, who raised him to notice the truth even when powerful people tried to hide it. For the first time in years, Marissa felt seen, not as staff, not as background, as a mother, and as Caleb slipped his small hand into hers, the entire boardroom slowly rose to its feet.